Vincent Kane had built his empire on reading people. 52 years of life, 34 of them in a world where misreading someone's character could cost you everything, had taught him that true nature revealed itself not in boardrooms or negotiations, but in how you treated someone who couldn't help or hurt you. That's why he stood in the bathroom of his penthouse at 5:30 on a Tuesday morning, applying theatrical makeup that added 2 decades and a lifetime of hardship to his face. His security chief, Marco Delgado, watched from the doorway with barely concealed concern. They'd worked together for 15 years, and Marco had seen Vincent do many things, some brilliant, some ruthless, some that kept Marco awake at night. But these tests always made him uncomfortable. "You don't have to do this yourself," Marco said, his voice carrying the careful tone of someone who'd made this argument before and lost. "We could send someone. I know 3 guys who could pull off the disguise just as well." "No." Vincent studied his reflection as he worked a scar prosthetic onto his cheek. The expensive Tom Ford suit was gone, replaced with clothes he'd purchased from a thrift store that morning. Stained, worn, the kind that made people look away. "I need to feel it, need to see their eyes when they decide I don't matter." He was considering a $3 million investment in Diane Mercer's restaurant. The woman had impressive numbers, revenue up 18% year over year, glowing reviews on every platform, a waiting list for weekend reservations that stretched weeks into the future. Her upscale Italian place had become the destination for the city's elite. On paper, she was exactly the kind of partner Vincent's expansion into fine dining needed. But Vincent had learned an expensive lesson 20 years ago about the difference between financial success and human decency. He'd partnered with a man whose restaurants printed money, but who treated his staff like disposable resources, who saw customers as wallets with legs, who measured human worth by net worth. The partnership had been profitable but poisonous. And when Vincent finally bought the man out, he'd sworn never to enrich anyone who lacked the most basic quality he valued: compassion for those who had nothing. That's what these tests were about. Not the money. He had more than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. Not even the business, really. It was about principle, about refusing to put power and resources behind people who would use them to crush those already on the ground. "The cameras?" Vincent asked, adjusting the fingerless gloves that completed his transformation. "Positioned." Marco pulled out his tablet, showing Vincent 3 different angles of Mercer's restaurant. "Vans parked across the street. We've got a clear view through the front windows and the side entrance near the kitchen. Audio's crystal clear. The button cam on your jacket is military. Grade, panic signal if you need extraction." He handed Vincent a small device disguised as a coat button. Vincent pocketed it, knowing he wouldn't use it. He'd survived worse than a restaurant manager's cruelty. He'd been that desperate man once, truly desperate, not pretending, and no one had extracted him then. "What about witnesses?" Vincent asked. "2 of ours positioned as pedestrians, 1 inside as a customer. She'll be having dinner when you arrive. If things escalate, we intervene." "But boss..." Marco hesitated. "What if she passes? What if she shows compassion?" Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then I write her a check for $3 million. Tell her she passed the most important interview of her life, and we become partners. I'm hoping she passes, Marco. I always hope they pass. But most don't." "No," Vincent agreed quietly. "Most don't." He straightened, feeling the weight of the disguise settle over him like a second skin. The makeup artist had done exceptional work, yellowed his teeth, added age spots to his hands, created a network of broken capillaries across his nose that suggested years of rough living. His hair, normally silver and perfectly styled, was now matted and greasy under a knit cap. He smelled authentic, too. The clothes carried the scent of unwashed fabric and desperation. Vincent looked at himself in the full-length mirror and saw a man people would cross the street to avoid, a man they'd pretend not to see, a man whose humanity they could dismiss with a glance. "Perfect. Remember," Marco said, as Vincent prepared to leave, "you're not just testing her business ethics, you're testing her soul. That's a heavy thing to judge someone on." "I know," Vincent replied. "That's why I need to be sure. Why I need to feel what it's like to be on the receiving end of her character. Power reveals people, Marco. I'm about to give her power over someone she thinks is powerless. Let's see what she does with it." He'd been 17 when he learned this lesson himself, starving in Naples, too proud to beg, but desperate enough to try. His father had died 6 months earlier, leaving nothing but debts. His mother had followed 3 months later, broken by grief and poverty. Vincent had been alone, invisible, one of thousands of street kids that tourists stepped around like puddles. He'd stood outside a restaurant one night, not unlike Mercer's actually, an upscale place where the smell of food was torture, and finally worked up the courage to ask for help. The owner could have done what most did, ignored him, called the police, thrown him out. Instead, she'd looked at him, really looked, seen past the dirt and desperation to the terrified kid underneath. She'd fed him, not scraps, but a full meal, sat with him while he ate, didn't ask questions, didn't demand gratitude, just acknowledged his humanity when the rest of the world had decided he didn't have any. That woman, Anna Rossellini, he'd never forgotten her name, had saved his life that night, not just physically, though the meal had been the first real food he'd eaten in 4 days. She'd saved something deeper, his faith that compassion still existed, his belief that not everyone measured worth by appearance. He'd built his empire after that through methods he wasn't proud of and deals that had required him to be ruthless. He'd crushed competitors, destroyed careers, played the game of business like the war it was. But he'd never forgotten the distinction Anna had taught him. There was business, and there was basic human decency. You could be ruthless in the first without abandoning the second. Now, 35 years later, with more money than Anna could have imagined, he tested others to see if that spark of compassion still existed, to see who deserved his partnership, his investment, his association. Most failed. It broke his heart every time, but he kept testing, kept hoping. Vincent stepped into the cold morning rain, feeling it immediately soak through the thin jacket. The temperature had dropped overnight, and his breath misted in the air. He'd timed this perfectly, 6 in the evening, when Mercer's would be busy but not overwhelmed, when Diane herself would be managing the floor. He walked slowly, adopting the shuffle of someone whose joints hurt, whose body had been worn down by exposure and hardship. The transformation wasn't just visual. He felt it in his muscles, the way vulnerability changed how you moved through the world. When you had power, you walked with purpose. When you had nothing, you tried to take up as little space as possible. The restaurant glowed warm in the gathering dusk. Through the windows, Vincent could see the evening crowd. Business suits, couples dressed for a special occasion, families celebrating something, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, the soft murmur of conversation and laughter. It looked inviting, comfortable, exclusive. He crossed the street and positioned himself where he could observe for a few minutes before approaching. This was important. He needed to see how Diane operated normally, how she treated people who mattered to her business. She was easy to spot. Mid-40s, professionally dressed in black slacks and a crisp white blouse, moving through the dining room with practiced efficiency. Vincent watched her greet a regular customer, all smiles, warm handshake, personal attention. She remembered his usual order, asked about his daughter by name, laughed at his joke. Perfect service. She directed her staff with subtle gestures, corrected a table setting with a smile, handled a minor complaint about wine temperature with grace and immediate resolution. She was good at her job. Excellent even. The kind of manager who made a restaurant run smoothly. But that wasn't what Vincent was testing. Anyone could be charming to people with money. The question was, who was she when it didn't? Benefit her? He moved toward the side entrance near the kitchen, staying visible from the street cameras. The rain was picking up, cold and steady. He knocked politely on the door and waited. Diane answered within 30 seconds, and Vincent saw the exact moment she registered what she was looking at. Her professional smile flickered. Her eyes did a quick assessment. Torn jacket, matted hair, the smell of unwashed clothes, and something shifted in her expression. Not quite disgust, but close. Discomfort, certainly. Yes? Her tone was already different from the warmth she'd shown the customer inside. Vincent kept his voice, rough but respectful. Please, ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but I haven't eaten in 2 days. Could you spare any food? I'm not asking for charity. I can work for it. Wash dishes, take out trash, whatever you need. It was a reasonable request. Restaurants had food waste, day-old bread, leftovers that would be thrown away. He was offering to work for it, showing willingness to earn rather than beg. And his approach was polite, non-threatening, desperate but dignified. Diane's discomfort became more visible. She stepped back slightly, positioning herself in the doorway to block his view inside. "We don't do handouts here," she said, her voice taking on the practiced tone of someone delivering a policy. "Health codes prohibit us from giving food to non-customers. There's a shelter on 5th Street. They serve dinner at 7. The excuse sounded official, but Vincent knew it was hollow. Restaurants donated food constantly. There were no health codes preventing her from giving him something. This was a choice, not a regulation. "Please," Vincent tried again, increasing his desperation slightly. "It's raining. Just something small? A piece of bread?" Diane's irritation grew. "I said no. We're busy tonight. Try the shelter." She began closing the door. Vincent didn't leave. This was the first wave, the first chance for her to show compassion. She'd refused, but not viciously yet. He needed to push further, to see if there was any humanity beneath the professional exterior. He knocked again, more urgently this time. Diane reopened the door, and now her annoyance was clear. "Sir, I already told you. I have money." Vincent pulled out crumpled dollar bills from his pocket, enough for a coffee maybe. "See? I'll pay. Just a bowl of soup? Please, I'm so hungry." This was the test within the test. He was offering payment now, removing any excuse about handouts. This was a transaction. A customer asking to purchase something, however humble. Diane looked at the crumpled bills with barely concealed contempt. "Those dollar bills won't cover our cheapest item. This is a fine dining establishment, not a soup kitchen. Our appetizers start at $18. "Then just coffee," Vincent pleaded. "Please, I just need something warm." Have you ever been judged by your appearance before you even spoke? Have you felt invisible to someone who decided you didn't matter? Drop a comment below and subscribe for more stories about karma and consequences. Diane's expression hardened. "You're disturbing my customers. I need you to leave now, or I'll have to call the police." Vincent saw it clearly now. The first chance given, the first chance refused. She'd had multiple opportunities to show basic kindness. Giving him food waste, selling him coffee at cost, even just acknowledging his humanity with a kind word. She'd chosen none of those options. But the test wasn't over. He needed to see how far this went, whether her refusal was caution or cruelty. "Ma'am, please." He let his voice crack. Let genuine desperation show. "I'm sick. I need real food. I'm diabetic. Haven't had a proper meal in days. Just something. Anything." It was a medical need now, a desperate circumstance, human vulnerability on full display. Diane had every opportunity to show mercy. One bowl of soup could save him, if his story were true. The cost to her would be negligible. The benefit to him would be everything. Instead, Diane's voice rose, loud enough for nearby diners to hear through the windows. "We don't serve homeless people here. You're making my customers uncomfortable." The words hit Vincent like a slap. Not, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." Not, "Let me see what I can do." But, homeless people. A category, not a person. She was making this public now, creating a spectacle. Other customers noticed. Vincent saw a businessman look away quickly, guilt flickering across his face. An elderly couple at a window table seemed sympathetic, but didn't move. A younger couple actually pulled out their phones, filming. Diane played to her audience. "This is a respectable establishment. We have standards." She called into the kitchen. "Marco, we have a situation." A large man emerged, the restaurant's security, not Vincent's Marco. He was intimidating by design, probably hired specifically to handle situations like this. Diane pointed at Vincent. "Escort him away from the building. He's harassing customers for money." Now she was recruiting witnesses, making it official, turning a desperate man's request for food into a security threat, creating an us versus them dynamic where the respectable people inside needed protection from the dangerous homeless outside. Restaurant Marco approached, and Vincent backed away slowly, maintaining his character. But his eyes were recording everything. Diane's body language, the satisfaction on her face, the way she'd turned his humanity into a problem to be solved with force. "Can't be too careful these days," Diane said to a nearby pedestrian, her voice carrying. "Homeless problems getting worse in this neighborhood." That's when Vincent saw her. A young woman in server's uniform emerged from the kitchen with trash bags. She'd witnessed the interaction, and discomfort was written all over her face. Her name tag read, "Oh, Lila Chen." "Diane," Lila said quietly. "We have leftover bread from lunch service. I could wrap some up." "Absolutely not." Diane's voice was sharp. "Health codes, Lila. We've discussed this. But we're just throwing it away." "Are you questioning my management?" Diane's eyes flashed with something cold. "Get back inside, now." Lila hesitated, glancing at Vincent. In that moment, he saw something rare, genuine compassion, fighting against fear. She was young, mid-20s probably, and clearly struggling financially herself based on her worn shoes and the way her uniform had been mended at the sleeve. She had every reason to protect her job, to follow orders, to look away like everyone else. Instead, as she passed Vincent on her way back inside, she slipped something from her apron pocket into his hand. A sandwich, wrapped in paper. Her eyes met his briefly, and she mouthed, "Sorry," before Diane's sharp voice called her back. Vincent felt the sandwich in his hand, still warm, probably from the staff meal, and something in his chest tightened. This was what he'd been looking for. Not in Diane, but in someone. Proof that compassion still existed. That someone would risk something, however small, to help another human being. Diane noticed. Her fury was immediate. "Lila, did you just—" She turned to Vincent. "Give that back. That's restaurant property." Vincent unwrapped the sandwich, turkey and cheese, simple but generous, and looked at Diane. She was just being kind. She was violating health codes and company policy. Diane's voice was ice. "Lila, we'll discuss this inside. As for you," she pointed at Vincent, "you have what you wanted. Now leave." But Vincent didn't leave. This was the second wave, the second chance for Diane to show humanity. She'd seen an act of compassion from her employee and punished it. She'd turned a simple kindness into a violation. The test was revealing exactly who she was. "Thank you for this," Vincent said, holding up the sandwich. "But ma'am, I'm still so hungry. And sick. Please. I need something warm, something more substantial. I'll do anything. Clean your bathrooms, mop your floors, anything." He was giving her another opportunity. She could have said yes to his offer of work, could have acknowledged Lila's kindness as admirable rather than punishable, could have shown even a glimmer of the warmth she'd displayed to the wealthy customer inside. Instead, Diane's face twisted with contempt. Diabetic? Convenient story. They all claim medical conditions. She turned to the gathering witnesses. A small crowd had formed on the sidewalk, phones out, watching this drama unfold. "See? Give them anything. They want more. You can't enable this behavior." She was mocking him now, taking his desperate plea and turning it into a joke for her audience. Some of them laughed, others looked uncomfortable but said nothing, and Diane fed off their attention, her cruelty growing with each witness who didn't object. "You have food," she said, gesturing at the sandwich. "That's more than most people would give you. Be grateful and move along." Vincent stood in the rain, holding Lila's sandwich, and felt the cold seep into his bones. He'd given Diane 2 clear chances to show compassion. She'd failed both. But he needed to be absolutely certain, needed to push one more time, to see if there was any humanity left beneath that polished exterior. "Please." He let his voice break completely now, let tears mix with rain on his face. "I'm begging you. I'm so cold, so hungry. Just let me come inside for a few minutes, just to warm up. I won't bother anyone. Please." It was the most vulnerable he could make himself, a human being, stripped of all dignity, asking for the most basic mercy. The cost to Diane would be nothing, letting him stand in her entryway for 5 minutes. The benefit to him, if his situation were real, would be enormous. Diane looked at him the way people look at something disgusting they've stepped in. "Fine," she said finally, and Vincent felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she had some compassion after all. Maybe— "Wait here." She went inside and returned a moment later with a takeout container. "Here's your food. More than you deserve, honestly. But I'm feeling generous." Vincent reached for it, gratitude flooding through him, despite knowing this was a test. Maybe she'd surprised him. Maybe. As he took the container, Diane leaned close enough that the street cameras wouldn't catch what happened next, but not close enough that Vincent couldn't see her face clearly. And she smiled. Then she spit, deliberately, thick and vicious, directly onto the food in the container. Vincent saw it land on the pasta, saw her satisfaction as she did it, saw the contempt in her eyes as she closed the lid. "Enjoy your meal, Beggar." She handed him the container with that same smile, then turned and walked back inside, leaving Vincent standing in the rain with her saliva on food she'd just given him. The moment stretched. Vincent stood there, container in his hands, feeling the violation of it burn through him. This wasn't just refusal. This wasn't just dismissal. This was active degradation. She'd taken his desperation and turned it into an opportunity for cruelty, and she'd enjoyed it. Through the window, he saw Lila's face, horror and tears. She'd witnessed it, understood what had happened. But Diane was already back to managing her floor, laughing with a customer. Her mood improved now that the problem had been handled. Vincent opened the container slightly, confirming what he knew. Her spit was clearly visible, a thick glob on the pasta. Evidence preserved. The rain fell harder, soaking through his thin jacket, and Vincent let himself feel it. The cold, the humiliation, the soul-deep violation of being treated like something less than human. He'd survived worse, had been actually homeless at 17, actually desperate. But this cut deep because it was a choice. Diane had chosen this, had multiple opportunities to show basic decency, and had chosen cruelty instead. He looked up at the restaurant, at the warm light and comfortable people inside, and caught his reflection in the window. A homeless man in the rain, holding contaminated food, dismissed and degraded. The test was over. Vincent made a subtle gesture, touching his ear as if adjusting his cap, and across the street, in the surveillance van, his Marco would see it. The signal. They had everything. Time to go. He turned and shuffled away, maintaining his character until he was out of sight. 3 blocks later, he reached the black sedan idling in an alley. The door opened, and Vincent climbed inside. Marco was waiting with towels and a change of clothes. "Boss, He stopped, seeing Vincent's face. "We got everything. 3 angles, crystal clear video and audio. The spit is visible in the footage. Her face when she did it." He trailed off. Vincent began removing the disguise methodically, peeling away the prosthetics, wiping off the makeup, shedding the persona of powerlessness like a snake shedding skin. With each layer removed, he felt the transformation back to himself, not just physically, but emotionally, from vulnerable to powerful, from dismissed to in control. "Show me," he said quietly. Marco pulled up the footage on his tablet. Vincent watched it play out. His approach, Diane's initial discomfort, her escalating hostility. The moment she'd called him homeless people, instead of seeing him as a person. Her recruitment of security, her performance for the witnesses. Lila's small act of courage, Diane's punishment of it, and finally, the spit, captured perfectly from the van's angle, showing Diane's face, her smile, her satisfaction. "She enjoyed it," Marco said quietly. "That's what gets me. She didn't just refuse. She degraded you and enjoyed doing it." Vincent watched the footage again, his fury building cold and controlled. "What about the server, Lila Chen?" "Already researched her. 24 years old, working 3 jobs, supporting her mother who has stage 3 cancer. Student loans are crushing her, eviction notice pending, car was repossessed last month." Marco pulled up more information. "But boss, her character checks out. Volunteers at a homeless shelter on weekends. Former teachers say she's the kindest person they know. Co-workers love her. She's just struggling." "And Diane?" Marco's expression darkened. "That's where it gets interesting. We found 3 Yelp complaints about her treatment of homeless people. 1 lawsuit that was settled quietly, former employee claimed hostile work environment, and I tracked down some previous incidents." He showed Vincent a series of documents. Delivery driver she humiliated for being late. Homeless veteran she refused to let use the bathroom. Elderly woman she mocked for asking directions. Vincent absorbed this, his jaw tight. So this isn't isolated, this is who she is. Pattern of behavior going back years. She's good at hiding it from people who matter, customers with money, health inspectors, business partners. But people she thinks are beneath her. Marco shook his head. "She's cruel, consistently." Vincent finished changing into his real clothes, a charcoal Armani suit, Italian leather shoes, his silver hair combed back. He looked at himself in the sedan's mirror and saw what he really was, a man with power, resources, and a very specific moral code. Financial vulnerabilities? He asked. She owns 30% of the restaurant, borrowed heavily for it, $400,000 in debt, behind on payments. The restaurant's barely profitable. She's been hiding that from potential investors. Lease is controlled by Marcus Webb, who we've worked with before. Suppliers are mostly small operations who jump at better contracts. Health inspection could be requested through our contacts at the city. Marco met Vincent's eyes. We could destroy her in 48 hours. 24, Vincent corrected. I want this done tomorrow evening, same time as the test. Maximum witnesses. Boss, are you sure? This is comprehensive destruction we're talking about. Vincent thought about the spit on the food, about Diane's smile, about Lila's tears, about every person Diane had degraded because she thought they couldn't fight back. She didn't just fail the test, Marco. She revealed who she is, someone who measures human worth by appearance, by wealth, by whether someone can help or hurt her. And when she had power over someone she thought was powerless, she chose degradation. He looked at his security chief. I have power over her now. I choose justice. What about Lila? Vincent's expression softened slightly. Full scholarship for nursing school. I saw her application on her social media. She wants to be a nurse. Mother's medical bills paid in full, $50,000 in cash. And a job offer at our corporate headquarters if she wants it. Total value around $200,000. Marco whistled. For one sandwich? For risking her job to show compassion when her boss demanded cruelty. For proving that goodness still exists. Vincent's voice was firm. She passed the test Diane failed. She gets rewarded. Diane gets judged. You know people will say this is excessive, that the test itself was cruel. Let them. Vincent looked out the window at the city lights. I've done terrible things in my life, Marco. Built this empire on decisions I'm not proud of. Crushed competitors who threatened me. Destroyed careers when necessary. I'm not a good man by most definitions. But I've never forgotten what it's like to be powerless, to be invisible, to beg for basic dignity and be denied. He turned back to Marco. I was that man once, actually homeless, not pretending, and someone showed me compassion when they didn't have to. That changed my life, saved it really. So you test others to see if they'd do the same. I test them to see who they are when they think it doesn't matter. When there's no benefit to being kind, no cost to being cruel. That's when character reveals itself. Vincent's voice was quiet, but intense. Diane revealed herself tonight. Now she faces what that revelation costs. Marco nodded slowly. I'll make the calls. What's our timeline? Start now. I want Marcus Webb contacted about the lease within the hour. Suppliers by morning. Health inspection requested by noon. Media tipped off to be at the restaurant tomorrow at 6 p.m. for a major story. Legal team ready with documentation. Everything coordinated for maximum impact. And you'll be there personally? Oh, yes. Vincent's smile was cold. She's going to see exactly who that homeless man was. And she's going to understand, too late, that cruelty has consequences. The next 24 hours moved with the precision of a military operation. Vincent had built his empire on the ability to mobilize resources quickly, and he used every connection, every favor owed, every ounce of influence he'd accumulated over 3 decades. By midnight, Marcus Webb had agreed to sell Diane's lease. The building owner had been looking to unload the property anyway, and Vincent's offer of $2 million, well above market value, was too good to refuse. By morning, Diane would receive notice that her lease was being terminated. 30 days to vacate. By 3 a.m., Vincent's team had contacted Diane's 3 major suppliers. The conversations were brief and effective. We're prepared to offer you exclusive contracts with the Kane Restaurant Group. Better terms, guaranteed volume, immediate payment. The only condition is that you terminate your relationship with Mercer's Restaurant, effective immediately. All 3 suppliers agreed within an hour. By 8 a.m., an anonymous complaint had been filed with the health department. Possible food safety violations at Mercer's Restaurant. Contamination concerns. Recommend immediate inspection. The city owed Vincent several favors. He'd donated generously to the mayor's re-election campaign, and an inspector was scheduled for that afternoon. By noon, Vincent's legal team had compiled a comprehensive file on Diane Mercer. Every complaint, every lawsuit, every incident of cruelty they could document. The pattern was damning. This wasn't a woman who'd made one mistake. This was someone who'd been failing the basic test of human decency for years. By 2 p.m., 3 local news outlets had received anonymous tips about a major story unfolding at Mercer's restaurant at 6 p.m. Prominent businessman exposing restaurant owner's treatment of homeless. Video evidence. You won't want to miss this. Reporters were already positioning themselves. Vincent spent the afternoon in his office, looking out over the city and thinking about Anna Rossellini, the woman who'd fed him in Naples 35 years ago. She'd been old even then, probably dead now. But her kindness had rippled through time, had shaped who Vincent became, had created this moment. He wondered what she'd think of his methods. Would she approve of these tests, of the destruction he was about to unleash on Diane Mercer? He thought she might, because Anna hadn't just been kind, she'd been fierce about it. He remembered her yelling at another restaurant owner who'd tried to chase Vincent away. He's a child, a human being. You treat him with dignity, or you answer to me. Dignity. That's what this was about, not revenge. Vincent had no personal connection to Diane, not punishment for its own sake, but a refusal to let cruelty go unanswered. A statement that how you treated the powerless mattered, that character had consequences. At 5:30, Vincent prepared for the reveal. He dressed carefully, the charcoal suit, a platinum watch, Italian leather shoes. He looked like what he was, a man with power, resources, and the ability to change lives with a word. Marco briefed the security team. 4 of you with the boss. Professional, intimidating, but no actual threats. We're making a point, not starting a fight. 2 more positioned outside as backup. Cameras ready to record the confrontation. This needs to be documented. What about Lila? One of the security guards asked. She'll be working the evening shift. Boss wants her present for the reveal. She needs to see that her kindness was noticed, that it mattered. At 5:50, Vincent's Bentley pulled up outside Mercer's restaurant. The evening crowd was already gathering, the same type of customers as yesterday, wealthy and comfortable, here for an expensive meal and good service. They were about to get a very different show. Vincent stepped out of the car, and the transformation from yesterday was absolute. Where the homeless man had shuffled and hunched, Vincent walked with purpose. Where the beggar had tried to take up little space, Vincent commanded attention. His security detail flanked him. 4 large men in dark suits, earpieces visible, projecting controlled force. People noticed immediately. Conversations stopped. Phones came out. Through the restaurant windows, Vincent could see diners turning to look. Diane was visible at her usual position, managing the floor. She hadn't noticed him yet, too focused on seating a party of 6. But she would. In about 30 seconds, her entire world would change. Vincent entered the restaurant with his security team. The hostess, young, nervous, started to greet them, but Vincent walked past her. He wasn't here for a table. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The comfortable murmur of conversation died. Silverware paused mid-air. Every eye in the restaurant turned to watch this wealthy man and his intimidating entourage move through the dining room. Diane turned, sensing the disturbance. She saw Vincent, expensive suit, commanding presence, obvious wealth, and her professional instincts kicked in. This was a VIP, someone important, someone who could be a valuable customer or connection. She approached with her best smile. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Mercer's. Do you have a reservation? I'm sure we can accommodate. Vincent's cold stare stopped her mid-sentence. He didn't smile, didn't return her warmth, just looked at her with an expression that made her smile falter. Is there a problem? Diane asked, confusion creeping into her voice. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Yes, Diane. Vincent's voice was quiet, but carried through the now silent restaurant. There's a problem. She blinked. I'm sorry, do I know you? Have we met before? Not formally, but we spent some time together yesterday evening. Around this time, actually. Vincent paused, watching her face. A homeless man came to your door. He was hungry, desperate, begging for food. Diane's face went pale. The memory was clearly surfacing, but she couldn't connect it to the man in front of her. This couldn't be... He asked you 3 times for help, Vincent continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. Diners were recording now, phones out, capturing every word. The first time you refused with a policy excuse. The second time, you publicly humiliated him, called him homeless people as if he wasn't human, made a spectacle of throwing him out. Diane's mouth opened and closed. That was, you can't be, I don't understand. And the third time, Vincent's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. When he begged you, literally begged, sick and cold and desperate. You gave him food, but first, you spit on it. The restaurant erupted in gasps and whispers. Diane's face went from pale to ashen. That's impossible, she stammered. That man he was actually homeless. He was filthy, disgusting. She stopped, hearing her own words, but it was too late. Vincent stepped closer. I was that homeless man. The recognition hit Diane like a physical blow. Her eyes went wide, her hand flew to her mouth, and Vincent watched the exact moment she understood what she'd done, who she'd degraded, what it was going to cost her. Oh my God, she whispered. That was you, but you you were. I was testing you, Vincent said clearly, making sure everyone heard. I'm Vincent Kane. The name rippled through the restaurant. People knew it, knew his reputation, knew his power. I was considering a $3 million investment in your restaurant, a partnership, expansion into fine dining across the region. Diane's legs seemed to weaken. She reached for a nearby table to steady herself. Mr. Kane, I didn't know. If I had known it was you. Exactly. Vincent's voice cut through her excuses like a blade. You didn't know. You didn't think I mattered. That's the entire problem, Diane. You treated me like garbage because you thought I was powerless, because you measured my worth by my appearance, by whether I could help or hurt you, and that reveals everything about your character. No, you don't understand. Diane was grasping now, desperate. I was just protecting my business, protecting my customers. You have to understand, homeless people can be dangerous, unpredictable. Protecting them from what? Vincent's voice rose slightly, not shouting, but commanding. A hungry man asking for food? I was polite, desperate, yes, but harmless. I offered to work for food. I offered to pay. I begged for basic mercy. He paused. You weren't protecting anyone, Diane. You were exercising power over someone you thought couldn't fight back. But you looked suspicious. Diane's voice was rising too, defensive and panicked. Dirty, sick. Anyone would have been cautious. I looked poor, Vincent corrected coldly. That's not the same as dangerous. You didn't see a threat. You saw someone you decided was beneath you. That's not caution, Diane. That's contempt. That's cruelty disguised as policy. The restaurant was completely silent now, except for their voices. Every diner, every staff member, every person on the street who'd been drawn by the commotion, all watching this confrontation unfold. Diane tried another angle, her voice taking on a pleading tone. Mr. Kane, I've had bad experiences before. Homeless people have harassed my customers, stolen from the restaurant. I was just being careful. So, you punish everyone? Vincent's question was sharp. You spit on food because of what others did? That's not protection, Diane. That's collective punishment. You made me pay for someone else's sins. He leaned forward slightly. And that's not business sense. That's moral bankruptcy. Diane was crying now, mascara running, her professional composure completely shattered. But anyone would have done the same thing. It's normal business practice to protect your establishment. No. Vincent's voice was final. He turned and gestured to someone in the crowd. Lila, come here, please. Lila Chen emerged from where she'd been standing near the kitchen, her face tear-streaked, but her posture straight. She walked to Vincent's side, and he saw Diane's face crumble further as she understood what was coming. Lila didn't do the same thing, Vincent said, his voice softening slightly as he addressed the young woman. When her boss demanded cruelty, Lila chose compassion. She risked her job to give me a sandwich. She proved that kindness still exists, that some people, when given the choice between comfort and conscience, choose conscience. He turned back to Diane. She passed the test you failed. Please, Diane begged, all pretense of dignity gone now. Please, Mr. Kane, give me another chance. I'll do better. I swear I'll change. I gave you 3 chances yesterday. Vincent's voice was implacable. The first time I asked for help, you could have shown mercy. You refused. The second time, you could have seen my humanity. You chose public humiliation instead. The third time, when I begged, actually begged, Diane, sick and desperate, you could have shown basic compassion. You chose to spit on food and give it to me with a smile. He paused, letting that sink in. 3 chances. You chose cruelty every single time. You don't get a 4th chance. You get consequences. This isn't fair, Diane's voice broke. You set me up, you manipulated me, put me in an impossible situation. I gave you a reasonable request within your capability to fulfill, Vincent said calmly. I asked for food you were throwing away anyway. I offered to work for it. I offered to pay for it. There was nothing impossible about showing basic human decency. You chose not to. That's not manipulation. That's revelation. He stepped back slightly, addressing the entire restaurant now. Let me tell you what I've learned in 52 years. I built my empire from nothing. I was homeless once, actually homeless, not pretending. I know what it feels like to be invisible, to be treated like trash, to beg for dignity and be denied. His voice carried weight, authority, lived experience. I've done terrible things in my business, crushed competitors, destroyed careers, played ruthlessly when I had to. I'm not a good man by most definitions, but I've never forgotten the difference between business warfare and basic human decency. He looked directly at Diane. Wealth doesn't excuse cruelty to the vulnerable. Power doesn't justify degradation. How you treat people when you think no one important is watching, that reveals who you really are. And yesterday, you revealed yourself. Now you face what that revelation costs. Vincent signaled to his lawyer, who stepped forward with a folder of documents. Effective immediately. I own your building's lease. You're being evicted. 30 days to vacate. Diane gasped, reaching for the documents with shaking hands. Your suppliers have been contacted, the lawyer continued, his voice professionally neutral. They've terminated their contracts with you, effective tonight. Your food deliveries stop immediately. No, Diane whispered. No, you can't. A health inspection was conducted this afternoon, the lawyer went on. Multiple violations were found. Your establishment is being closed pending remediation. That process typically takes months. Diane's legs gave out. She collapsed into a nearby chair, her face in her hands. Your stake in this restaurant is now worthless, Vincent said quietly. Your loans are being called in. I've spoken with your creditors. You're facing bankruptcy. And you're blacklisted from every establishment I have influence with, which is most of them in this city. He paused, letting the weight of it settle. You're finished in this industry, Diane, not because you refused me, not because you didn't know who I was, but because of who you are. Because when you had power over someone you thought was powerless, you chose degradation, you chose cruelty, and you enjoyed it. Diane looked up at him, her face destroyed. This is too much, too cruel. You're destroying my entire life. You destroyed your own life yesterday when you spit on that food, Vincent said flatly. I just made sure there were consequences, real consequences, permanent consequences. Because character matters, Diane, and yours was found wanting. He turned to Lila, his expression softening. As for you, your compassion didn't go unnoticed. I saw what you did, the risk you took, the courage it required. Lila's eyes widened as Vincent pulled an envelope from his jacket. Full scholarship for nursing school. I saw your application on social media. You want to help people, and you should. Your mother's medical bills are paid in full. $50,000 in cash to help you get stable. And a job offer at my corporate headquarters if you want it. Total value, approximately $200,000. Lila's hands shook as she took the envelope. She opened it, saw the checks and scholarship letter, and burst into tears. I can't. This is too much. It's not enough, Vincent said gently. You showed me that kindness still exists, that some people, when tested, pass. That's worth everything to me. He smiled. Rare, genuine. Use this opportunity well. Help others the way you helped me. Pay it forward. I will, Lila sobbed. I promise. Thank you. Thank you so much. Vincent turned back to address the entire restaurant one final time. Everyone here witnessed what happened. You saw someone fail the most basic test of humanity. Let this be a lesson. You never know who's watching. That homeless person could be a billionaire. That elderly customer could be a CEO. That struggling parent could be an investor. He paused, making eye contact with various diners. But that's not the point. The point is that you should treat everyone with dignity, not because of who they might be, but because it's right. Because compassion isn't complicated. It doesn't require wealth or education. It requires only recognizing the humanity in others. His voice grew stronger. Diane Mercer failed that test. She revealed that she measures human worth by appearance, by wealth, by convenience. And now she's learning that character has consequences. Real ones, permanent ones. He looked at Diane one last time. You could have been my partner, could have had $3 million and a future in fine dining. Instead, you have nothing. Because when it mattered, when someone needed basic human compassion, you chose cruelty. That choice determined everything. Vincent turned and walked toward the exit, his security team falling in around him. Behind him, he heard Diane's sobs, the whispers of shocked diners, the click of phone cameras capturing every moment. As he reached the door, he paused and looked back. How you treat the powerless reveals your true character. Remember that, all of you, because tests like this, they're happening every day, and someone's always watching. Then he was gone, leaving behind a restaurant full of people who would never forget what they'd witnessed. The story would spread. The video would go viral. Diane Mercer would become a cautionary tale. And somewhere in the city, someone else was being tested right now, unaware that their character was being measured by how they treated someone who seemed to matter not at all. The story exploded across social media within hours. Multiple diners had recorded the confrontation, and by midnight, Mafia boss tests restaurant manager was trending on every platform. The video had everything: drama, justice, a satisfying comeuppance, and a clear moral lesson. The comments were ruthless. She got exactly what she deserved: play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The way she said homeless people like they're not human, disgusting. That server though, she's the real hero, risked her job to help someone. This is why you treat everyone with respect. You never know who's watching. But there were other voices too. Was this test fair though? He deliberately deceived her. Seems excessive to destroy someone's entire life over one mistake. Rich people playing games with regular people's livelihoods. This is gross. Vincent read the comments from his office, unsurprised by the debate. These tests always sparked controversy. Some people saw justice. Others saw cruelty. He understood both perspectives. But he also remembered the feeling of Diane's spit on that food, the satisfaction on her face, the pattern of behavior his team had uncovered, years of cruelty to people she thought didn't matter. This wasn't one mistake, it was who she was. Marco entered with an update. The media's going crazy. 3 outlets want interviews with you. 5 want to talk to Lila. Diane's lawyer called. She's threatening to sue for entrapment, emotional distress, defamation. Let her try, Vincent said calmly. Everything we did was legal. The test was ethical. I made a reasonable request. She chose her response freely. The consequences were business decisions, not personal attacks. She has no case. What about the public backlash? Some people are calling you a bully. Vincent shrugged. Some people will always sympathize with the person who faces consequences, regardless of what they did to earn them. I'm not concerned with public opinion. I'm concerned with principle. And what about Diane herself? She's completely ruined. She ruined herself, Vincent corrected. I just made sure her character had costs. She'll survive. She's educated, capable, can find work in another industry. But she'll never again have power over vulnerable people. That's the point. Marco hesitated. Boss, I have to ask. Do you ever worry that these tests are, I don't know, playing God? Deciding who deserves success and who deserves ruin? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Every day, he admitted. Every single day, I question whether I have the right to judge people like this, whether my methods are justified, whether I'm any better than the people I'm testing. And then I remember being 17 in Naples, starving and invisible, and the woman who fed me anyway, who saw my humanity when everyone else saw trash. Vincent's voice was soft. Anna Rossellini saved my life with one act of compassion, and I hope, that these tests honor her memory. that they create a world where more people would make her choice instead of Diane's. So you keep testing. I keep testing. I keep hoping people will pass. And when they fail, when they reveal cruelty instead of compassion, I make sure there are consequences. Vincent looked at Marco. Because if people like me don't hold people like Diane accountable, who will? The system? Society? They failed to stop her for years. I didn't. Marco nodded slowly. What about the previous victims we found? The delivery driver, the homeless veteran, the elderly woman? Reach out to them. Offer compensation. Let them know they weren't wrong, weren't worthless, weren't deserving of how Diane treated them. Vincent's voice was firm. Part of justice is validating the people who were hurt, making sure they know it wasn't their fault. Over the next few days, the ripple effects of the test spread through the city. Other restaurants began implementing new policies, some out of fear of being tested, others from genuine inspiration. Staff training programs on treating all customers with dignity, donation programs for feeding the homeless, cultural shifts, small but real. Vincent tracked these changes with satisfaction. This was the goal, not just punishing Diane, but sending a message that would change behavior more broadly, creating a world where compassion was expected, not exceptional. He also tracked Diane's attempts to rebuild. She tried painting herself as a victim on social media, but the previous complaints and lawsuit details emerged quickly. Former employees shared their own stories of her cruelty. The pattern was undeniable. She tried to find work in other cities, but Vincent's influence was wide, and his reputation clear. He'd destroyed her for failing a character test. Other employers didn't want to risk hiring someone who might bring similar scrutiny. She tried legal action, but her lawyers quickly advised her to drop it. Everything Vincent had done was legal, and pursuing it would only keep the story in the news, further damaging her reputation. 3 months after the test, Diane Mercer filed for bankruptcy. Her restaurant was closed permanently, sold to pay creditors. She was working at a warehouse, the only place that would hire her. Her social circle had abandoned her. Her reputation was permanently destroyed. Vincent received regular updates, but felt no satisfaction in her suffering. This wasn't about revenge or enjoyment. It was about consequences, about making sure that character mattered, that cruelty had costs, that power couldn't be abused without accountability. Lila Chen, meanwhile, was thriving. She'd enrolled in nursing school full-time, her mother's health improving with proper treatment and reduced stress. She'd posted a tearful thank you video that had gone viral in its own right, and she'd started volunteering more at the homeless shelter, using her story to advocate for treating vulnerable people with dignity. Vincent attended her nursing school orientation, sat in the back, unnoticed, just wanting to see her begin this new chapter. She'd passed his test when most people failed. She deserved every opportunity her compassion had earned. One evening, 6 months after the restaurant test, Vincent stood in his office, overlooking the city, and thought about legacy. He'd built an empire, accumulated wealth beyond measure, wielded power that could change lives with a word. But what did it mean? What would he be remembered for? Not the business deals, he suspected, not the money, but maybe, hopefully, these tests. These moments where he'd used his power to hold people accountable for their character, to reward compassion, to punish cruelty, to remind the world that how you treated the powerless mattered. His phone rang. Marco. Boss, I have something you should see. It's about Diane. Vincent's jaw tightened. What now? She's started a blog, calling it Lessons in Humility. She's writing about what happened, but not as a victim. She's actually reflecting, taking responsibility, talking about her pattern of behavior, why she failed, what she learned. Vincent pulled up the blog on his computer. The first post was titled, I failed the test, and I deserved to. He read it carefully. Diane wrote about her prejudices, her contempt for people she'd deemed beneath her, her years of cruelty disguised as policy. She wrote about watching the video of herself, seeing her own face, hearing her own words, recognizing the ugliness she'd displayed. I can't undo what I did, she wrote. I can't take back the spit on that food, the humiliation I inflicted, the years of treating vulnerable people as less than human. But I can acknowledge it. I can learn from it. I can spend the rest of my life trying to be better than the person Vincent Kane revealed me to be. Vincent read the entire blog, then the comments. Some were supportive, others were skeptical, most were somewhere in between, willing to watch, to see if this transformation was genuine or just another performance. "What do you think?" Marco asked. Vincent was quiet for a long time. "I think people can change, sometimes, if they're willing to do the work, if they truly understand what they did wrong." He paused. "But that doesn't mean they get their old life back. Consequences are still consequences. She's still blacklisted, still ruined professionally. That doesn't change. So, no redemption? Redemption is between her and herself, between her and whoever she hurt. It's not mine to grant or withhold." Vincent closed the blog. "But I'll be watching. If she's genuine, if she spends the next decade proving she's changed, maybe she'll find peace. Maybe she'll help others avoid her mistakes. That would be something. And if it's just an act, then she'll reveal that too. Eventually, character always reveals itself." Vincent smiled slightly. "That's what these tests prove, over and over. You can hide who you are for a while, but eventually, you show your true self. And that self has consequences." Marco nodded. "So what's next? Another test?" Vincent looked out over the city, at the millions of people going about their lives, making choices every day about how to treat each other. How many were being kind? How many were being cruel? How many were being tested right now without knowing it? "Always," he said quietly, "there's always another test." 2 weeks later, Vincent stood in the bathroom of a hotel in a different city, applying different makeup. This time he was becoming an elderly man. Trembling hands, stooped posture, the vulnerability of age instead of poverty. The target was a bank branch. The test: how would the manager treat an elderly customer who was confused, slow, struggling with technology? Would they show patience, compassion? Or would they dismiss him as an inconvenience, a waste of time, someone who didn't matter? Vincent studied his reflection. The disguise was perfect. Age spots, wrinkles, the slight cloudiness in his eyes that suggested cataracts. He looked like someone people would help across the street out of pity, or ignore because dealing with the elderly was inconvenient. Marco watched from the doorway, same concern as always. "You know, boss, most people your age are retiring, playing golf, traveling. You're putting on disguises to test strangers. Most people my age never learned what I learned," Vincent replied. "That character matters, that how you treat the powerless reveals everything, that someone needs to hold people accountable. And that someone is you? That someone is me." Vincent straightened, feeling the weight of age in his disguised posture. "Because I have the power to do it, and power without purpose is just wealth. I want my power to mean something." He walked slowly toward the door, cane in hand, ready for another test. Somewhere in that bank, a manager was going about their day, unaware that their character was about to be measured, unaware that their choices in the next hour would determine their future. Would they pass? Would they show patience and kindness to a confused elderly man? Or would they fail, revealing contempt for someone they deemed inconvenient? Vincent would find out. He always did. As he left the hotel, he thought about Anna Rossellini one more time. The woman who'd fed a starving teenager in Naples 35 years ago. She'd probably never known what that act of compassion had created. An empire, yes, but more than that. A mission, a purpose. A man who would spend the rest of his life testing others to see if her kind of goodness still existed in the world. Most people failed. That truth haunted Vincent. When given the choice between compassion and cruelty, between seeing someone's humanity or dismissing it, most chose the easier path. The path Diane had chosen. But not everyone. Lila hadn't. Anna hadn't. And somewhere in that bank, maybe, hopefully, someone would pass this test too. Vincent entered the bank, shoulders stooped, hands shaking slightly, the very picture of elderly vulnerability. A young bank manager looked up from her desk, and their eyes met. The test began, and in that moment, as it did with every test, Vincent felt the weight of what he was doing, the power he held, the judgment he was about to render. Was it fair? Was it right? Was he playing God with people's lives? Maybe, probably. But someone had to. Someone had to remind the world that character mattered, that how you treated the powerless had consequences, that compassion wasn't optional. It was essential. Anna had taught him that. And now, 35 years later, he was teaching others. One test at a time, one person at a time, one moment of truth at a time. The bank manager approached him with a smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" Vincent began his act, confused, slow, struggling with the forms. And he watched, waited, observed whether this woman would show patience or frustration, kindness or contempt, humanity or dismissal. The test would reveal everything. It always did. Because character, Vincent had learned, couldn't hide forever. Eventually, when you thought no one important was watching, when you had power over someone you deemed powerless, when compassion would cost you something and cruelty would cost you nothing, that's when your true self emerged. And Vincent Kane would be there, watching, testing, judging, always watching, always testing, always holding people accountable for who they really were. That was his purpose, his mission, his legacy. And he would continue, until his last breath, creating a world where people like Anna Rossellini were rewarded, people like Lila Chen were celebrated, and people like Diane Mercer learned, too late, but definitively, that cruelty has consequences, real consequences, permanent consequences. Because in Vincent Kane's world, character mattered, and everyone, eventually, was tested. If this story made you think about how you treat others, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of karma and consequences. Have you ever helped someone without knowing who they were? Or witnessed someone fail the basic test of human decency? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, you never know who's watching. Treat everyone with dignity, because character reveals itself. And someone's always keeping score.